Welcome to the Property Management Mastermind Show with your host, Brad Larsen. Brad owns one of the fastest growing property management companies in San Antonio, Texas. This podcast is for property managers by property managers. You'll hear from industry-leading professionals on best practices, new ideas, success stories, and lessons learned. This is your opportunity to learn about the latest industry buzz surrounding property management, as well as tips and strategies to improve your business.
FindDigs makes your leasing process lightning fast and 100% fraud-proof straight from the applicant's phone. FindDigs not only instantly verifies income by connecting directly to bank accounts without any documents uploaded, but also uses 3D selfies and facial match technology to perform complete fraud-proof bank-grade identity verification, allowing property managers to process applications in under an hour. For more information, check out their website at www.finddigs.com or reach out to Henson at henson@finddigs.com.
Hey everybody, this is Brad Larsen. I want to talk to you about a new podcast out there that I would highly recommend called 300 to 3000, How to Grow Your Property Management Company to Scale. One of the hosts is Matthew Whitaker. He's a good friend of mine. I visited their operation and I really, truly respect what GK Houses has done and they are still doing. They are experts at growing at a fast scale into a large scale business. So expect to hear the real world truth about all the mistakes the company has made growing into it and all the good things they're doing. Again, go to 300 to 3000.com. That's their website, and catch them on iTunes, Spotify, and or Stitcher. Look forward to hearing from good things from those guys. Take care. Welcome everybody to another edition of the Property Management Mastermind podcast. I'm your host, Brad Larsen, and today's guest, I have Mike Catalano coming at us. He is going to be talking to us about the initiation and development of a new business called Pure, a property management company. And so Mike has been a long time property management company owner. He is very astute in the business, and it's an exciting interview we're going to have today to learn more about Pure and their intentions and what they've been doing and where they feel they're going to go. It's quite exciting. Got a lot of interest brewing on this. So without further ado, Mike, how are you today?
Doing great. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Appreciate you coming on. So let's get to the introductions real quick. Kind of give us a couple minutes about who you are, what you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm co-founder of Pure Property Management. As you mentioned, I've been in this industry, for 25 plus years. Not to age myself completely, but I have been in it for quite some time. Family's been in it, obviously prior to that. Just kind of a little background on how long I've been doing it. We used to take property management calls in our house. We had a property management hotline. At 10 years old, when the phone rang, we were sprinting down the hallways trying to answer this thing within 2 rings. And, if it got past 2 rings, we would hear it from our family. And generally, 90% of the time, it was my dad checking to make sure we were answering it. So, at a long lineage of that, even all the way down to when I was 10, 12, 14 years old, my uncle and I and my dad used to go down to the San Jose courthouse steps to buy foreclosed properties. And once we would buy them, they were usually trashed, and they would take me to the property, drop me off with a big garbage bin and say, clean it up. We'll see you later. So we've been flipping homes, and, we would prep those homes, we would paint them, we would clean them and do all that stuff to the point where, we would get it prepared and rent them. So our family's been doing it for quite some time. And, once we did it for our family, then we did it for more people. And next thing you know, we had a property management company in the family. My dad had one in Silicon Valley. And then, in the early 2000s, we acquired a company that was about 300 doors, did our first acquisition. And we kind of got done with it. And we said, this is pretty good. It actually works out pretty well. And, the multipliers were even less back then. And so they worked out pretty well. So then we bought another one and we bought another one. And then I branched off a little bit and bought one outside of the area in Santa Cruz and in Sacramento. And next thing you know, after prior to Pure, I acquired about 13 companies. And for me, that it was fun actually. It kind of revived me in the business. I did all the grind of property management. I went from answering the phones, taking the phone calls. I used to manage I think it ended up being 285 or 300 properties with an assistant and worked on that and, worked 80 hours a week and showed all the properties and went through the grind of it. And the goal was to really build the company so it didn't really need me anymore. And oddly enough, when I got to that point, I had some time to kind of, kind of reboot myself and, kind of saw this change in the industry. And this is kind of how Pure kind of came about. So you've been around a long time and, been a NARPO member for years and, loved going to your conference at PMMCon multiple times as well. I think for me, the industry has treated me very well. And, with Pure, we are very transparent and open, and we want to kind of treat the industry well right back.
No, I think that's interesting and very, it sets you apart because you've got the background of the property management industry. You've done everything from start to finish. And that does set you apart as an acquirer because, as we talk more about the new faction of Pure and the new business that you've started, you got to understand kind of where you're coming from in order to really understand where you're going. And I like where you're coming from. I like where you're going. And there's a big difference because we do see some acquirers in this industry, in this space, to where they've never really done property management. They don't really understand it from the ground level. They understand it from the 30,000 foot level, but they don't really understand it from, doing it in person. And that could be a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, you can spin that either way, but I can tell you most operators out there, most people that are doers in the property management world, they like the fact that you're coming from the space of actually getting it done by yourself, getting it done, at the user level. So I want you to talk more about Pure and what it is and kind of where you envision this going.
Yeah. And so when I kind of talk about how we kind of got it off the ground and started, and, it's something I've had in my head for quite some time. I've been watching this happen. I've been watching this develop in this industry, and we've been seeing the changes over the last 10 years. And, I've seen all these other companies come through, some inside the industry, some outside the industry. And I kind of always wanted to do it, but I knew one thing, I wasn't going to just kind of be a property management guy who just did it on his own, because I think that it takes a special mixture of people to do something like this. You've seen companies that are straight from the industry try and do it. You've seen companies that are straight from technology to try to do it outside the industry as a whole and try and do it. I think it needed a really good mixture. And, as we know, everything happens on or after golf. So my business partner and co-founder, Joe Colvari, he and I have known each other for quite some time. And, we finished a round of golf, and, one of our really close friends who introduced us, he's actually our lead counsel, Rob Gagliasso. Yes, lots of Italians in this company, but we welcome all. So he and I were just talking, and Rob actually wrote my last 3 purchase agreements for companies I acquired. And he said, tell Joe what you've been doing, and let's kind of talk about this. And Joe was winding down with his business. He was actually exiting a company and taking it from the public world to private and selling the company off. And we kind of started talking about it. And Joe's expertise is, he's a seasoned CEO in Silicon Valley for the last 25 years. He's taken 2 companies public. He's taken a company from 25 employees to 3,500. He's raised out about $500 million over his many years. So he's that Silicon Valley guy that we all know, but he's actually, I wouldn't tell him this to his face, but he's a good guy as well. We have a lot of fun banter back and forth with each other. But, ultimately we talked about it, and we kind of looked at it and said, this is a humongous industry, right? We all know this. Everyone in our industry knows this. We know how big it is. It's never been put on the map, because the funny thing about it is, all the smartest people in the world are coming up with how to get people to buy ads and, how to do Facebook and social media, all these smart people. But, someone who doesn't have a bathroom in their one bedroom, and us fixing that is like the lowest of the low. We've always been treated way down here. But you know what? That is a very important thing that nobody ever considers. This is someone's life every day. We're not dealing with social media. We're dealing with the necessities of this life. So we just wanted a different approach to where we want to continue to have really strong connectivity with our clients, really strong connectivity with our tenants. And what I talked about it with Joe is that, look, this industry is gigantic. People are just starting to get to understand this, but it's never been well respected. And I think that we can try and help, give it the recognition that it deserves. And that's kind of what we've been talking about. And he's obviously a technology guy. So, doing some tech enablement on the side would help as well, especially with multipliers and, ultimately optimizing what we're trying to do business-wise. So we started, like anyone would do, take an idea and go talk to people and see if they give you money for it. So we took this idea, and we did go to the venture capital world. We went to private equity. We went to family offices. We went to high net worth individuals, and we put this deck together and we brought it up to people. And people are like, we love this idea. You have 40,000 property management companies, doing it 40,000 different ways. I mean, even the companies we bought to this day are really well-run companies, and we all do it differently. So, and not that they're all wrong, but there is got to be a one way that we can do this, right? To a certain extent. And then there's $30 billion of fee income out there in this. And this is what the public world is seeing, in the private equity world and venture capital. This is why they're jumping into this, because of the recurring revenue. And the fact of the matter is there's so much money in it to be had. So we've saw this, of course, but we basically tested the waters, and people were very open to it and very interested in what we're doing.
Now, here's
ironically,
so,
sure.
I want to ask a couple of questions. So I want you to tell us more about your acquisition intentions. I mean, really kind of where you guys feel you're going. And along that same discussion point, try to illustrate to us the differences between venture capital and private equity, because that really gives us a background of where the money's coming from, who's bringing the money, and what intentions you are using in your acquisition strategies. Go from there.
Yeah. So, I guess, first and foremost on the acquisition side, I've been doing this for quite some time. So we try and make the process as simple as possible. I've looked at hundreds of P&Ls for property management companies. We can narrow down a price and be really quick on this. We don't have to send it to a whole bunch of different people to get it looked at and, have it audited and all that stuff. We audit it ourselves really quick and understand it really fast. So the aspect of doing acquisition, we try and make it more simple. Now, and I think that's one of the big differences initially, is that because we raise money through family offices and high net worth individuals, we have control over what our company is doing and how we're doing it. To an extent, we have to fit everything within a box, but we ultimately have control to buy the companies. So we don't have to send it out. In the venture world, they're not a huge fan of acquisitions. Generally, they want organic growth, and they, really want to spend money quickly. And private equity is a shorter plan. So venture capital is usually about 10 years. They have a 10-year plan, and they want to have some sort of 10x plus exit at the end of those 10 years. Private equity usually has about a 5-year term where they raise a fund and they invest the money, and they have about 5 years before they have to either reinvest or they have to do some sort of liquidation of the assets. So with us, we just have high net worth individuals and family offices that are allowing us to just run the business. Like, we want to be able to run the business and not have somebody in the way of what we're trying to do, because myself and everyone else that we brought on board to date, they're the experts in the industry. And then we have the technology guys and the corporate side, they're the experts in what they do. So let's put them together and we get to run the business. Now, when you have private equity or venture capital, occasionally, and depending on how they fit it within their box, they actually have to get to the point where they get approval on acquisitions, and they have to go through maybe a few more processes to be able to get to that point. And we don't have to do that. So I think that's a big piece. The other piece is that this is probably the most important, and the reason why we didn't go that route of venture or private equity yet, it's because, ultimately these are cash flow businesses, right? Most people are cash flow positive in this. And the last thing I want to do, and we want to do, is burn our money. So we want to continue to buy companies, build some technology on the back end, and ultimately come to the point where we can help enable it a little bit better and maybe get that multiplier at the end. But we want to continue to stay cash flow positive. And I think that's the big difference, because when someone gives you money, they want that money to work, and they don't want to see a cash flow positive company at the beginning. They want to see burn, burn, burn. And that's not what we want to do. We actually want to stay and continue to be cash flow positive as we grow and as we continue to grow. And we have done that to date so far.
Now, I know you may not have an official title yet with Pure, but do you kind of just be clear to explain your role as you have it now? Go from there.
Yeah. So, Joe and I are the general partners and co-founders, but we don't have titles. You'll never see a title on my emails or anything like that. We're just not big on that stuff, because what we're really trying to do is I think we kind of talked about it before. We feel like we're an indie label, like an indie record label, right? And what we're trying to do is sign up a bunch of rock stars, right? So this is not about Joe. This is not about me. This is about the people that we think are rock stars in this business, and we're trying to bring them together and give them an opportunity to get the recognition they deserve, and to be able to come out and say, hey, we've been kicked on, stepped on, and pushed down for how many years now? Has this been considered a low-level industry at property management? I mean, I have friends would look at me, oh, you're in property management. Well, I work for Facebook, and I work for Google, and I work for this in Silicon Valley. I'm like, well, I do property management, but prior to Pure, I only work 2 days a week. So, good job on your job, but I think property management is pretty good. But at the end of the day, we don't have labels. So my job here is Joe and I help raise the money. We help kind of, work with the leadership team and help guide them and help them do what they need to do to do their jobs best and enable them as best as possible. And then we, of course, think of the future and what we can do and what our next steps are as we go. We still do the grind. I mean, we do everything is to ordering swag. Joe's done that. I mean, we do anything we need to do to make sure the company works. And everybody knows that we're available 24/7 for anyone in the company. I don't care who you are, what you do, or anything like that. You can reach out to us and talk to us anytime. We just feel like we're just part of the crew. And that's kind of how we run it.
Talk to us about the pace of your acquisitions and then also some of the goals you have in getting on that pace and where you want to go here in the next 6 months to a year or so.
Yeah, it's a good question. We came out of the gates quite quickly, right? So, we literally, we closed our round October 1st of last year and bought our first companies December 1st. And in the first 3 months, we bought 10 companies. So obviously I've done a lot of acquisitions before, but they're usually like one or two at a time. But the difference is the people that we acquired, once again, going back to the Rockstar bit, we have people like John Neal, Jennifer Newton, Jennifer Stoops came on board, and Keith Becker, Bob Thomas, and I'm sorry if I forget anybody, but we had a bunch of people that came on board that either have no acquisitions or no operations, or they know business development. And we kind of put that whole group together. And we all worked together to make sure that those 10 acquisitions went well. And it went really well. We took a little bit of a break just to make sure that we were going to be able to digest these. Mostly, the most difficult aspect is the HR point, because you go from 4 employees to 50 overnight. It changes quickly. So we wanted to make sure that we took care of the employees right. If we had any hiccups, we always promised that we'll take care of the employees. And at the end of the day, you have to show people you'll take care of them rather than tell people. And I feel like we've done that to date. But, the goal here is just to continue to acquire. I mean, I think we talked about it before we jumped on is, we're sitting at, 6,000 plus doors under management, but talk to me in 2 months and that's going to be significantly more. So we're trying to, I think we kind of, our little joke in our company is we're kind of like Joey Chestnut. We're going to try to ingest as many hot dogs as possible without throwing up. So that's what we want to do. But I think the important part of it's different because we are actually very picky on who we want to bring on board. We basically are looking for, we have 3 basic main criteria. We want good people. I mean, we are trying to build a really strong culture. And that's the most important because this is still a people business. Technology will never replace the people side of this completely. What we want to do with technology is enable them to do their job, right? Enable them to do the people side of the job. And that's what we want to do. So number 1 is people. We want good people, strong people, good leaders. Whether you're going to be coming on board with Pure or you're going to stay locally or whatever your plan is for that, those are the criteria for first and foremost. Secondarily, have a good company. And usually good people in this industry have good companies, right? And they kind of run hand in hand. And of course, importantly, but last but not least is investable markets. We want to make sure that we're in a good market that we think we can grow in. So we did that at the beginning, brought a lot of people on board that I know really well. And then they've brought some people that they know. And that's kind of how this network has continued to grow.
Do you have a 6 month or 1 year goal?
Yeah. So ironically, we started off lower than we are actually going to hit. So we kind of said, let's do 10,000 doors in 1 year. And now we're looking, and I think we can beat that. Maybe we're at 12,500 and we just keep moving the goalposts on everyone. So it depending on how many we can get, if we can get to 15,000 plus in 1 year, that would be a huge feat for this company and what we can do. As long as we can do it properly by taking care of employees, taking care of the clientele, and taking care of the tenants that are involved as well and not having major hiccups, we'll try and ingest as much as we can.
Explain the software piece to me a bit. So you guys are developing your own software or using a third party?
Yeah, so we're using third party. We use third party right now. We are developing the software, and the goal, like I said, is to build the software that enables the people side of things to happen. So we're going to, workflow is obviously a huge piece. We need to make sure that we can have a workflow. I think the difficult part that we all run into in this industry is that we have to use 5, 6, 7, sometimes 8 different platforms to do our job. And the last thing we want to do is have someone have to jump from one platform to the next platform to the next to the next to do one item. So we're trying to put all of that into one. Now we are working on the fact whether or not we're going to work with some outside software platforms, because we will open our API up, or we'll just build the whole thing. We're in the process of, really getting to the point where building the whole thing makes the most sense. But as you know, this is a humongous product. It's gigantic, and we're not going to wait until, we're a humongous product before we launch it. So we will launch it and the goal is, before we launch it, is to make sure that it's simple and it works well for the people and better than what we have now. So when we acquire a company, we keep them on the platform that they're on, just because we don't like that disruption. Except we've had a couple companies on really old platforms that are pretty much not around anymore. So we might have to move them off immediately. But the goal is to, really put in, of course, the accounting side. I think accounting and workflow are some of the two largest pieces, right? So we want to make sure the accounting side is taken care of properly and make sure we don't screw up money, because the one thing that we always say, we never miss an owner payment ever. So we do that as number one. And number two is we really want to have a workflow process that works, and we can take the automated side of it and take the 27-step process and turn it into 5. And then the person can do the 5 steps on their own and take all the minutia out from under them, so they don't have to go from jumping from one platform to the next.
How do you envision your organic growth model to look like? You think you guys can grow organically? Because that's been a challenge with other acquirers, is they can buy homes pretty easy, but they don't know how to actually go out and do business development. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so right now we're working individually with all the companies that come on board. We're looking at what they're doing as far as their marketing processes go. We're seeing what their organic growth was previously, and if it can be sustained. Obviously, right now you're seeing a heck of a lot more properties being sold than we've seen in quite some time. So you actually have to acquire organically more properties to bring that on to really combat that attrition. But I think we're keeping people we don't like losing the brand that's been around for 20 or 10 years, that's been percolating in that specific areas that we're in. So that we're jumping in. So we're keeping them going, but we're helping them on the back end. We have a marketing team that's very familiar with real estate, very familiar with SaaS platforms, very familiar with the Google search and how it works. So we're really trying to work on the organic side individually per company while we're using their name and continuing to use their name. Because what you'll notice about us is, occasionally we wear swag, because look, I've never been had swag, and it's fun to wear it, but it's not about the Pure name yet. We don't need to build the Pure name. We want to build and enable the companies that we're acquiring. So it is always a challenge, because I think what we're all trying to do is get that 75% of self-managed people of those properties out there to jump onto property management, right? And you're seeing it more and more in states like California, Washington, where they're highly regulated. And we can see that a lot of these other states are getting to that point as well. So I think that's what we're really pushing, is to show the landlord, hey, look, this is important for you. It's probably your number one asset that you own. So why wouldn't you turn that over to someone who would manage it? You have people manage your money. You have a bank holds your money. You have all these things that manage all your important stuff, but not your most valued asset. So we're going to really work on trying to get that group to come on board with property management.
Yeah, cracking that individual landlord nut is a tough one. The institutional landlords get it. Even the ones that have 5 or 10 properties, they tend to get it more. It's the majority out there, like 60, 70, 80% of the individual landlords, they probably have 1 to 2 properties. Yeah. So here's an interesting tidbit of the market. So we all know the super sell-off is going right now. I mean, everybody's selling their homes, and we have management companies that their inventory is decreasing significantly. And another interesting tidbit. So I was listening to John Warlow's podcast this morning, Built to Sell, and he was talking about there's been an uptick of another 20 to 25% of business owners, not just property management company, but business owners wanting to sell because of the change in the whole thing that COVID brought on, between working from home to changing their industry to reevaluating where their life is today with all of this health scare going on. And so you guys are so young, you may not have seen the uptick, but what are you seeing in your market research out there? Are management companies now just, their inventory is shrinking so bad, they're just dying to sell? I mean, what are you seeing?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty big mix, because there's basically 3 different types of people that own these companies right now. You have, there's a generational shift. Number one, the average property management company owner is probably about 60 years old, right? So they're actually getting to the point where, look, I need to find an exit at some point. Maybe COVID and the stuff we're going through now and the change of technology is pushing them a little bit more quickly to getting to that exit. So you have them that want to exit between now and 5 years, probably at best. And then you have the person who is just fed up, kind of what you're talking about, just tired of it, the regulations, the auditing of the Department of Real Estate or the real estate commissions, depending on where you are. My previous company that I had before it came into Pure just got audited for a year past. We made it through great, which is fantastic, but they're out there looking, right? So the regulations involved, COVID, all of these things, they're just fed up and just want to get out. So they're to say, you know what, I'm just going to sell off. I'm going to get out. I don't want to be in this business anymore. And we're going to go. And then the interesting one to me, and probably the one I've been very, very excited about, is the companies that are very well run, have fantastic net margins, but they want to be part of something bigger. They want to be part of this. There's a shift. There's a change. There's no question this is happening in this industry. Now, there will be survivors and they will be able to hang on. There's no question in my mind as well, because we always need the smaller landlord that's here. And we want to enable them as well, because they've worked their tails off and they deserve to be there. But there's the group of people that are saying, you know what, I'm never going to get the multiplier that I deserve. Because our multipliers, look, everyone knows that there's a kind of a range, and certain things will push that range up or down. But at the end of the day, they're not going to get their multiplier, number one. Number two, how are they going to compete with some of these larger people or larger companies, venture-backed and private equity, who are throwing just loads of cash at the marketing side of things and really pushing them down on pay-per-click and all other aspects of it, who are the next thing you're going to see them on radio and all over the place. How are you going to compete with that? So they see that as well. But I think the important thing, and this is where we really thought about this, is how do we get someone who has a great company, who has great margins, who has great income, and a really good group to jump off that company? And to do that, you have to do something special. And that's why I think that's one of our biggest differentiators. And all of the companies that have come on board so far are all of those. They're all people who run great companies, have great margins, and really understand this industry. And they're running a fantastic company. But they saw this opportunity and say, look, I can join that company. I can get an exit. You have an opportunity in some cases to invest in a limited partnership. You have equity in the company. So if you take all of these things and put them all together, it ends up being a pretty fantastic exit at some point. Our goal is not to just sell off this company. The goal 100% is to build the best company that we can build with the best people. What Joe and I talked about from very early on is we're too old to have drama. We're too old to have problems. So we're taking everyone we know that we love as people and bringing them if they want to come on board with us. And he's taking people from his world, who he worked with for 10, 15 years, and he's brought them on board, and we've all put this company together, which is one of the hardest things. It's taking like a tech corporate world and combining that with the real estate or property management side and making them work like this. And I don't know if you were at PMM, of course, and you saw we had that group there. We had our VP of marketing, David LaPont. We had Ashley Fiddler, who's our VP of product, who came to this event, who've never been to a property management event ever. And we put them together. And this group fit in perfectly because they respect the heck out of what we do here. And Ashley, head of product, is learning how hard it is, right? So going back to your question, that's the group that we're looking at that sees this and sees what we're doing and say, you know what, I want to be part of something bigger. And at some point get that exit that I deserve with the technology halo that we're building as well, because that's what's really, pushing those multipliers up significantly, is being able to have the technology piece as well.
So what are your predictions in the economies of scale? Because one of the big reasons for rolling up or acquiring is to create that system where you save money. Instead of having 5 employees do one thing, you have 1 employee do those things. So kind of talk to me about where you predict that. Obviously, it's basically money to the bottom line, because if you spend $1 less in expenses, you make $1 more in profit. Yeah. So kind of talk us through that just for fun, because it's kind of fascinating to me to see where, you could take a business from, I don't know, fun figure, 5% margins to like a 25% margin because of those economies of scale. But give me some real world stuff there. What's going on in your head?
Yeah. So, the goal here is to, take most companies that we've seen are usually working between like a 10 and 15% net margin, right? And, of course, that's not our goal. Our goal is to get up to 40, maybe 50% margins. And those are what my companies were running at prior to Pure. And, that's a combination of a few things. It's processes, good people that you hire, hard workers. And we're buying companies. We're not acquiring and firing people. We are right now building the foundation, and the foundation, maybe it hits our margins a little bit, but that foundation is important because we're building this within people who know how to manage property. I think this is one of the biggest keys. My personal opinion, being in this for so long, is actually, I mean, third-party property management is not rocket science, but there is a science to it, right? And to be able to manage a property properly, you have to have the right people. So you build the foundation, and at some point, will there be a consolidation of like some people? Yes, but the foundation is important. You build that foundation out, and what we've already noticed is some people who we've acquired, maybe their job is not a full-time job and where they're working, but we've moved them onto the corporate side because they understand property management accounting, or they understand business development. And why lose someone's experience when you're doing that? And that's a big difference that we're seeing that these other companies aren't really looking at, is embracing the people who understand this business. So will there be a point, because you have a couple different types of acquisitions. You have a foundational acquisition, and then you have a roll-up, right? And there's a lot of those as well, where a company wants to just sell their company, move on, and you'll roll that company in. And will there be a little bit of a consolidation at that point? I mean, that's how I built some of my acquisitions in Silicon Valley. Is we built a big company there, and then we would buy companies and maybe bring one or two client-facing employees over, and then maybe have the rest of them not come on board with us. And there's definitely a science to that as well, because you want to make sure that you're not losing the client-facing people where the client feels this huge change and they don't know who they're talking to or anything like that. So you got to make sure that you keep that connectivity with them. But at some point, you have a back office that will handle specific aspects of the business. You have a biz dev team, you have a marketing team, and you'll really be more of a departmental type business. And then you'll have the people side of it that handle the people-facing clients. So I think that, go ahead.
I'm going to get into the weeds in this next question. If you're done with that discussion point.
Yeah, sure.
So this is really far-fetched in the weeds, as I mentioned. Do you guys plan on having a set standardized pricing model for across the nation, or is it going to be market specific?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we are, we're working through that right now, but I think right now, I just don't think you can standardize that across the nation. What we're doing is we put together what we call the Pure Playbook, right? And the Pure Playbook is not just technology, it's the whole kit and caboodle, right? So we have technology piece, we have the playbook of the operational piece, we have the acquisition piece, and then we have the people piece, right? So those four, it makes up the Pure Playbook. And what we're doing right now is the playbook, the pricing, and all of that combined. We're doing that nationally, and then we're doing it by state, because there's regulatory issues, there's compliance issues by state, and then region as well. So I think that there's going to be differences across the board. I just don't see a national way of doing that right now. We may change that at some point, but right now we're keeping it individually based on the areas, based on the competition, based on what people are offering. And, we're trying to get competitive. We've seen companies come in and offer a flat fee, and really that is in a low flat fee to say, because most of them are venture backed, where they are burning money, and they're okay with burning money because they're doing what we call a door grab. They're trying to get as many doors under management as they can. So when they do that and offer, under $100 flat fee a month, we know as business people in this, that's not sustainable the way that they're running their businesses. Until you get to the point where you're 100% back office for almost everything, and you're paying people, in much less compensation, you won't be able to sustain that, and you'll be a massive burn. And we've seen those companies go from that flat fee to now back up to the regular percentages that we're standardly seeing. So I think that's something we are certainly researching. I think the one thing we do want to do is simplify a lot of the fees that we have. And I've been someone who's been guilty of this, is putting all these different ancillary fees in there. And look, we love the revenue, we love the income. But as you do the biz dev side, to simplify that and make it much easier for the clientele, I think it's a great thing as well.
Well, here's another kind of a off-topic discussion point, but it does tie into you guys a little bit, is comment on what you've been seeing into the build to rent model. So one of the things that came out of PMM Con was Rob Hahn got up there and talked about DR Horton, for example. They're building out these neighborhoods, and they're building them specifically to sell to a large investor, let's say all 150 homes, for example, and then those investors are turning around and renting it. And DR Horton, for example, would be making double what they would be making to just selling those homes individually. So, which is scary in a little way, but if you as a company can get into that to manage it, man, that's a windfall. So, but it's a trend that's kind of going into a weird space. It doesn't really mean anything. It's not going to be the apocalypse for property managers, but it's a fun topic. And I'd love to see what your research has shown from that. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, there's still the funny part there. That is definitely on the rise. You've seen all these huge companies are putting in, $3 to $6 billion. We've seen in a range of people putting money into they're going to buy 10 to $20,000, 20,000 homes and kind of either buy them individually or build these build to rent. So there's a lot of that going on. You still have 80% of these rentals in this nation are still owned by people who have 1 to 10 doors. So they're still going to need that aspect. But institutional management is quite different, obviously, than a regular individual who's managing a property for someone. And they come and go more quickly because they do build these things up to sell those portfolios. So you have to be prepared as a management, not to jump off topic, be prepared if you are managing 100 or 200 doors for an institutional, be prepared when those go away, because it's probably somewhere between a 2 and 5 year cliff where that will change. So I would say, what we are seeing is that the interesting part, and I totally agree with it, you have a generational shift right now where the millennial generation is looking more to rent than they are to buy. And that's why they're building these build to rents, because like this generation doesn't like to buy, they like to rent, and the numbers show that. And they want to be able to move and go anywhere they want at any time, along with the fact that people are being able to work from home, only having to go in a couple days a week. They're moving outside of some of the areas as far as metropolitan cities and getting outside. So maybe their commute's longer, but it's only 2 or 3 times a week. So they're building these communities, and they're basically like apartment complex communities, but single family homes, right? So it's going to have a rec center, it's going to have a pool, it's going to have social events, and they're really trying to bring together a little mini community to where they can do it. And you're going to see a ton of these coming on. The biggest question, in my opinion, is will those companies like a Lennar and a Blackstone and all these ones that are building it, will they ultimately, and they do have management, but are they going to manage that on their own? Or will they go to a company who has some sort of tech enablement side of it to really go and help them manage their business? And that's still yet to be determined, because we know historically we've seen these larger companies try and manage it, and it hasn't worked out that great for them, because property management's a tough business, right? There's really nothing out there to make it simple. And that's, what we're trying to kind of solve, but they run into a big problem of becoming a service business, which they don't really want to do. Yeah, but I do think it's a big change for sure.
One of the things I know about you is you're well-versed on what's going on in the actual current happenings in the management industry, along with the real estate industry as a whole.
Need a repair at 2 a.m.? Easy does it. Easy Repair coordinates maintenance and nothing else, and takes after-hour maintenance calls for property managers, working with your property management software, so you can see exactly what Easy is doing without leaving your own software. From Las Vegas, Nevada, our full-time maintenance coordinators will dispatch your work orders directly with your vendors. Give us a call at 800-488-6032. Or visit our website, easyrepairhotlinellc.com.
So let's talk about one other fun topic as of recent is the CDC and all the moratorium and eviction moratoriums that are going on. So apparently, whatever's going on, and they're ending at the end of July 2021. I think that's kind of the bottom line, throwing away all of the, who's ruled, overruled, and other underruled. I'm so sick of hearing it. It makes me want to cry. But it's going to end the end of July. Yeah. Would you agree? Okay. So between that,
maybe. Well, depending on what state you're in, let's put it that way.
Very good point. Very good point on that. So depending on which state, but they're talking at the federal level. So you're looking at the super hot real estate market, and now you have potential inflation coming in, and you have this eviction moratorium going to be potentially ending in July. Where is this all taken the real estate market here for the rest of the year?
Yeah, it's a super interesting topic to talk about. So when we had, ironically, like Pure, we signed our first lead investor the day before the country shut down, right? And that was a weird time because we were super excited. And then we were like, what the hell happened? The country just shut down. Like we're still, after you sign your lead, you go sign everybody else after, because they're waiting for the lead to sign, because the lead vets you. And this is part of this problem. And we're saying, okay, maybe we should wait. This is kind of a strange time to go asking people for money. But the next thing that we're really worried about was, are we going to get rent in April, of last year? So it was an interesting time. So at the end of the day, we've seen this, and everyone in this industry has seen it at this point in the third-party management side, where you're in and we're in, is we have good qualifications of tenants, so people pay, right? And I think the biggest mistake that the government can make, and what they have made, is to get in the way of that, right? And what happens is once they get in the way, people don't have the responsibility anymore. And it's unprecedented that they jump in the way of our contracts and tell us that they don't have to abide by a contract that we have with another individual, right? It's unprecedented. And why landlords, look, I totally get that tenants have hardships with this. We all have. Everyone's gone through something. I don't care if you're a tenant or an owner of a property or a landlord. It was a tough time for everybody, right? It was a strange time. It was a tough time. It's unprecedented that we go through, and probably use that word too much, but it was. And to really hang this on a landlord, I mean, landlords, I felt like as a landlord myself, I got blamed for this. Like, we're not paying you, there's a pandemic. And I go, well, I had nothing to do with the pandemic. So why are you coming after me or our clients or other people that are doing it? And I think that the way, especially in third party, if the government would have stayed out, I think we have 90% of our owners that we work with are, pretty darn good people, and they want to work with people. And you have 10% that are a little difficult probably to work with. And then you have 90% of our tenants are great people and very easy to work with and want to work something out. And 10% may be difficult to work with. If they let us handle it with the landlord and the tenant, I guarantee that this would have worked out much more amicably for everybody, rather than jumping in and telling everybody what you have to do. You don't have to pay. And by the way, not letting them pay, what did that do for a tenant? It basically gave them a loan. By the way, you owe it now. You got 6 months off. Now you owe it all. How did that help them? It put them in a bigger hole, where a lot of landlords probably would have forgiven some of the money on their own, because there are wealthy landlords out there. So it's unprecedented that they went through this. Use that word again. I don't understand why they jumped in it. And the CDC, for that matter, who has really nothing to do with any of this stuff as far as real estate goes, to jump in. So it is what it is. Let's use that cliche, and to the point where we need to deal with what we can do and how we can do it. So to kind of point into California, which is going to have their own rules, they can continue to expand or extend. And we just kind of say, okay, well, at what point does this end? Now they're saying, you can apply as a landlord and we will pay you your rent. Well, that's fantastic, but it's taking forever for them to get the money. So the landlords are now fronting the money for months and months at a time. Previously, they were talking about allowing you not to pay your mortgage. But hey, you can not pay your mortgage for 6 months. Well, as we all know, mortgage is not your only payment, right? You have property taxes, you have insurance, you have maintenance, you have all these things. So I really think, the government kind of blew it on how they handled this. And I always say, until I can walk into Safeway, grab a loaf of bread and walk out, then your rent's due, right? I mean, you can't have one thing free and one thing not. So we need to be able to work something out and let the people do it on their own. Most people are good people and want to work things out. We have good qualifications with our tenants. They don't want to ruin their credit. They don't want to ruin their landlord reference. They want to work something out. And that's what we really saw before they stepped in and changed things again. So I'm not sure where we'll go. My only worry is that if this pandemic ultimately doesn't go away, will we be right back where we started from, or even worse off? But when this ends, I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting thing. But I think most importantly in our business, we're looking at 98.5% of rent collected over the last year. So, I mean, that just shows you that the people out there want to pay their rent, and they still see it's understood and it's due.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. That's roughly about what our rent collection rate is. I mean, 98, 99%. So, it would have been easier for them just to let the local magistrates, the local judges determine who gets evicted or not evicted. So kind of getting rid of all that, let's imagine if we get all of a sudden a flood of homes into the market coming off of mortgage foreclosures and or evictions, and that's going to cool off the sales market and potentially just kind of put things back to normal a little bit. I mean, we use that word unprecedented. Well, dang it, the sales market has been unprecedented of recent. Everyone has stories. They put the home in the market. It did this, and everyone has stories of big sell-off, losing 20%, 40% of their inventory to individual landlords, just like seeing the high watermark and they're saying, heck with it, sell it, and I'll go put the money in the market or Bitcoins or whatever they're going to do. So it's an interesting time, and we don't know exactly what's going to go on. I'm just trying to bring up to see if we can have a discussion, because I know you do a lot of research on your side, and you're around a lot of smart people there And that is kind of fun to talk about. So let's kind of wrap this up. I want you to put out your URL. So how does somebody reach you and find you as Pure?
Yeah, so we're purepm.co. It's www.purepm.co. You can go to our website there. Once again, I think one thing about Pure is, and then we kind of talked about earlier, is we're not making this about Pure. We're available to reach out there. Anyone can reach out to me anytime. I take every call. I love talking about this business. I love talking about the industry. But as you can see, we're not putting our name out there. We've done 0 press releases. We've done 0 announcements of acquisitions. We really have done nothing. The first thing we've really actually did is through that party at PMMCon with, Enterprise Bank and Second Nature. And, that was the first thing we actually did publicly, is really just throw a fun party. And at that party, it wasn't about Pure. It was about, hey, let's finally get out of our houses in our first mask-free conference, which still, freaked out my wife, but we were okay and vaccinated and all okay. But at the end of the day, everyone was so excited there, I felt, because it was finally, we're out, we're finally having fun and drinking. But at the end of the day, this is not about, myself or Joe or Pure. It's about the people that are coming together as a whole and really trying to change, embrace the change of this industry, right, and be part of it. So
yeah, you guys have been very quiet about this. I even had to ask you if you were even ready for a podcast, because everyone's kind of buzzing around it in the background. They're like this, and no one really has heard from you. And be very frank, you have not been beating the drum, which is fine because you guys have enough going on to where you can pace it out, and people will hear about it word of mouth, and you're doing the right thing. So I love what y'all are doing. It's interesting. It's good for the industry. I think it elevates everything that we're doing as far as a whole, as far across the board in the nation. And I wish you guys the best of success. So one more time, how do we reach you if someone wants to talk to you further about acquisitions or just property management in general? How do we reach you?
Yeah, you can reach me obviously through there. If you're on Facebook, you can connect with me there. You can email me, mike@purepm.co. Those are kind of the best ways to reach me. I probably don't want to put out my cell phone on Facebook Live, but if you email me, you will get my cell phone. You can text me, call me at any time. But those are the ways you can reach us. We have a great team, so anyone that who might be working with Pure, they're all open to talk to everybody as well. And I think that's the fun part too, is the group we brought together. They're so excited about this. I mean, every single day. Don't get me wrong, it's a grind. We're working our tails off. But every single day we wake up working with people we like and we enjoy working with, and it's fun. And that's really what the culture we're trying to bring. So I'm sure some of the people that are listening know people in our company. Feel free to reach out to them anytime. But, I'm always available as well.
Mike, thanks so much for coming on. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. And we'll talk soon as well. Take care. Thank you.
As more tenant-friendly legislations are passed, from reduced security deposits to no evictions in the winter months, and everything in between, in the future, the landlord's income will be ultimately affected, and even being driven out of their rental business. Property managers and landlords need to make sure their voices are heard to help reduce the tide of these increasing laws that will ultimately make owning a rental property more difficult and costly. Let your landlords know about SureVestor's Landlord Protection Insurance to help them protect their rental income. Call us at 800-975-0562 or visit SureVestor.com to learn more about SureVestor and how it can help you protect your landlord's income and grow your business.
This has been a podcast episode by PropertyManagementProductions.com. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast, leave us feedback, and come back for our next episode.